Hello, dear listeners. Welcome back to the podcast. Welcome back to the podcast. Welcome back to the podcast. In the last episode, we are still discussing the Nigerian Police Act 2020. In the last episode, we gave an introductory background to the Nigerian Police Act, discussing the general objectives and the specific objectives of the Act. And we briefly discussed the primary functions of the police, Section 4, and then duties of the police force to enforce certain constitutional provisions, Section 5 of the Act, okay, which are part of the second part of the Act, that is the establishment, composition, and duties of the NPF, Nigerian Police Force. Okay, so in this in today's episode, we are going to be discussing the powers of the police, powers of police officers. That's what we're going to be discussing in today's episode. That's in section 31, I think. Yes, section 31 to 70 of the Act, powers of the police. Because someone is asking why from section 5, why jump to section 31 of the Act? Okay, so really, the other parts in between are really just an administrative procedure. For instance, starting from section 7, section 7 to 10 talks about the appointment, removal, functions, and powers of the IGP, which is strictly an internal or administrative. We wouldn't love to delve into that. That's part 3. And then section 11 to 16, constituting the fourth part, part 4, talks about the appointment and functions of the DIG, AIG, and CP. And then part 5 now, section 17 to 25 talks about general administration, which is an internal administrative thing. We don't have to delve into that. Section 26 to 30 talks about the financial provisions of the police costs. That makes provision for the funding of the police. And then after that, part 7 now, section 31 to 70 talks about the powers of the police, which I believe is one of the crux of this podcast. So let's go to section 31 now. Let's discuss the powers of the police. The powers of the police, part 7, section 31. The powers of the police. First is investigation and arrest, okay? Investigation and arrest. Now, where an alleged offense is reported to the police or a person is brought to the police station on the allegation of committing an offense, the police shall investigate the allegation in accordance with due process and report its findings to the AG, Attorney General, either of the Federation or of the state, as the case may be, for legal advice. Take note. Okay, first is investigation. It is the duty of the police to investigate every allegation of a crime or an offense committed, and with due process, okay, and report its findings to the AG, Attorney General, whether of the state or the federation. Now, 32.1, arrest generally. Now, a suspect or defendant alleged or charged with committing an offense established by an act of National Assembly, okay, shall be arrested, investigated, and tried or dealt with according to the provisions of this act, except otherwise provided. Okay, so the police can arrest and investigate and try suspects, okay? 32.2, a person shall not be arrested merely on a civil wrong or breach of contract. Take note of that. Civil wrongs are not the matters of the police. A person shall not be arrested merely on a civil wrong. So someone obtained a loan from somewhere, maybe a cooperative society or any of those things, and then he's finding it very difficult to pay. What most people do is that they write a petition to the police, and then the police goes and arrest such a person. That is a civil wrong. That is a civil wrong. Okay, it need not police investment. Police intervention. Did I say investment? Sorry, it's none of the business. It's none of the concern of the police. That's a civil wrong. A person shall not be arrested merely on a civil wrong or a breach of contract. Section 32 sub 2 of the Police Act. 32.3, a suspect shall be brought before the court as prescribed within the act or any other law, or otherwise released conditionally or unconditionally. Okay, we are discussing the powers of the police. Section 33, in making an arrest, now mode of arrest, of course the police can arrest, but mode of arrest. Now, in making an arrest, the police officer or other persons making the arrest shall actually touch or confine the body of a suspect unless there is a submission to the custody in action of war. So for a police officer to arrest, this is the procedure for arrest now. The police officer shall touch or confine the person to be arrested. Okay. Now, section 34. Now, a suspect or defendant may not be handcuffed, bound, or subjected to restraint. while effecting an arrest, the police does not necessarily have to handcuff every person it goes on to arrest. Okay, it doesn't have to handcuff or bind the person. Okay, now there are of course, there are exceptions to that. That is circumstances in which a police officer should handcuff or bind the person. Now, one, where there's reasonable apprehension of violence or an attempt to escape. Where there's a reasonable apprehension of violence or an attempt to escape. Two, where the restraint is considered necessary for the safety of the suspect or the defendant, where it is necessary to safeguard the suspect or the defendant. And then three, by order of a court. That's provision of section 34 of the Police Act. Okay, now section 35, notification of cause of arrest and the rights of the suspect. It is the duty of the police officer effecting an arrest to notify the suspect of the reason why he's been arrested. Okay, as well as his right to say a legal practitioner and to remain silent. Section 35(1). Now, except where the suspect is in the actual course of committing an offense or is pursued immediately after the commission of an offense or has escaped from lawful custody, the police officer or other person making the arrest shall inform the suspect immediately of the reason for the arrest. Shall inform the suspect immediately of the reason for the arrest. Okay. And then 35(2). Now, the police officer or the person making the arrest or the police officer in charge of the police station shall inform the suspect of his right to, one, remain silent or avoid answering any question until after consultation with a legal practitioner or any other person. B, consult a legal practitioner of his choice before making, endorsing, or writing any statement or answering any question put to him after arrest. C, free legal representation by the Legal Aid Council of Nigeria or other organizations. So, you first, as a police officer investing the arrest, it is their duty to first inform the suspect of the reason for his arrest, as well as his right to remain silent, right to access a legal practitioner or the legal aid. Okay, and also they have the authority. The authority having custody of the suspect shall notify the next of kin or relative of the suspect at no cost to the suspect. Okay, the person who is arrested, his next of kin has to be notified. Okay, that will be all for this episode. In the next episode, we'll continue for section 36 of the Act, talking about arrest in lieu and the humane treatment of arrested suspect. So thank you very much for joining this episode. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.